What is an essential piece of any Victorian or historic costume? The petticoats, of course. Hello, it's Icy, yes, back with the next part of this Victorian, late Victorian costume outfit. Not really a costume, I'm trying to make it quite accurate. Project. So, finished the corset. As you can see, the next step is the petticoat, or probably two petticoats, actually. Now, I've done a fair bit of research, by which I mean I've read a whole heap of blog posts and watched a bunch of videos on YouTube, because this is how we research historic costumes these days. And I am confused and have not found a great deal of information. Petticoats don't seem to be anchored into time particularly, unless there's something that has a very dramatic shape that it's associated with an outerwear. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. The things that I want to know that I'm not sure of is how big, how much volume, width should I have for the petticoat underneath the skirt? The skirt has a circumference at the bottom of 5.5 meters. Surely I don't need a petticoat that big? The best advice I can find is that the outer petticoat should just be maybe like 10 centimeters less than that. That is a lot of material. But also then I found advice of if you're putting a ruffle, then the petticoat doesn't need to be as big because the ruffle takes the volume. But then I've found pictures of where some device that says, well, the petticoat is basically the same pattern as the skirt but worn underneath. And then I found things where it's like the petticoat looks nothing like the skirt. It's actually being worn underneath, where it's like a much sort of slimmer fit thing, and then all of the volume is in ruffles at the bottom. So I have no idea, is what I'm saying. So the current plan is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a bum roll first. Because what I've realized is when I'm wearing the skirt, I don't necessarily have a great deal of hip flare. And if I have more hip flare, then I think I will get a more dramatic waist silhouette, which is really what I'm after. So for the bum roll, what I'm planning to use is the finalized hip gore pattern from this corset, which I think will work perfectly. I need to add about 5 centimeters to the back to allow for the back lacing gap, and then cut 4 of these, and I think that should make me a rough pattern for a bum pad / bum roll that should work quite well. The reason I'm doing this is because I do actually want some lift at the sides, not just straight at the back, because honestly, I'm fine at the back. So that's the first part of the plan. I'm going to use, from a previous video, you would have seen me tie-dye this piece of material, which has got this super cool, fantastic, purpley black texture going on. So I'm going to use this, this is just cotton broadcloth. I'm going to use this to make the bum pad because it's about the right amount. I should be able to have dramatic purple and black crinkly sort of stripy sort of things. So that works really well, and I get to reuse this. The stuffing for the bum pad, I'm actually planning to use cabbage, so leftover scraps, because after so many mock-ups over the last little while, and I have been reusing the material for the mock-ups to cut it down into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces, but I have reached, on a great deal of fabric, the end of what I can cut out of them. So I'm going to chop that up and then turn that into the stuffing. I think that should work fine. I am all about reusing. If you can hear that bird outside, not much I can do about it. So now, for the petticoats themselves, what I want to do is, for at least one of them, I want to do something with this linen skirt I have. So this is a tiered linen skirt. So it's got 4 tiers, there's not a great deal of gather on the tiers. However, I think it's kind of the right shape. It's not very voluminous. It's only about 2.7 meters around the circumference at the bottom, as opposed to the 5.5. And obviously the elastic's completely gone. It's also too big for me these days, so hence I am prepared to sacrifice it. So I think what I'm going to do, actually, the very first thing I'm going to do is make the bum pad. And then after I've made the bum pad, I think what I'm then going to do is try my Victorian skirt on with this as a petticoat, just how it is, and then just see what it looks like. Does it add volume? Does it look better? Is it any good? And then if I decide I need more volume, what I'm going to do is take some slices out and add some panels, pretty much. I might just take out one slice down the middle and then just separate it and add like a triangular panel, which actually will replicate somewhat the pattern of the Victorian walking skirt, which is basically panel, then big swoosh at the back. Could be fine. That might just work how it is. Oh, the sun just came out. One sec. That's better. So for the second petticoat, I'm actually going to make one from scratch. What I have is this linen sheet. So this is a grey linen queen-sized sheet. I ripped off a little bit to make something and then didn't. It's fairly transparent, so it might not be dense enough. It's also quite stiff, as you can see, so I think it will be suitable, but it's also, I mean, this much of it doesn't weigh too much. The skirt itself probably weighs more than this, so I don't know what. If the sun would like to work out what it was doing right now, that would be most appreciated. I don't quite know what style I want to make for this, but I think what I want to do is have a straight-ish to the knee and then several layers of ruffles or pin tucks or something. I really, really don't know. The other disadvantage is if I do that, this might not go underneath as well. I don't know. I really, really don't know. It is surprisingly vague out there on what's appropriate. I think perhaps because everybody just hides it under the skirt, so nobody's got any firm idea anyway, but we'll see. So that's the general plan. Bum roll first, and then just work some stuff out, i.e. just like any of the other things that I've made on here so far. But let's see how we go. So, I've made a bum roll. Well, technically more of a hip roll, and I like it. So, it's filled with cabbage, so little chopped up bits of material from all of the previous projects, including scraps from this, which was quite handy. I've been wearing this arrangement for the last, I don't know, hour, 2 hours, something like that. What's happened is all of the little scraps, unsurprisingly, have all kind of gathered down the bottom. So I need to work out, and I do want it to be sort of nothing here, and then it more of the at the back, basically, because that will be more flattering if it kind of gradually moves down. But so I think what I need to do is work out some way of like stopping the stuffing floating around. I mean, obviously if I was using fiber fill or something like that, it wouldn't be a problem. It'd all just stick where I needed it to go. But I did want to use the leftovers pretty much, and now I've got a whole chunk of tiny bits of chopped up fabric, which genuinely I don't have any other use for. At least in the bigger bits, I can give them to Mr. Icy to use in the shed for wiping up spills or something. But anyway, so let me try this with the skirt, and we'll see what that looks like. It looks so much better. Look at that. Look at that. That is a dramatic improvement, considerably more than I thought. So it looks, I was a little bit worried about kind of the additional, so I do have a bit of stuffing under this sort of section here, but I think that's good. I definitely wanted it over the hips to increase the hip spring, which has worked very well. Still got this like little weird, I've got the weird divot here at the back because the stuffing is shifted. I can fix that somehow. I don't know how, but I can totally fix that. But that looks fantastic. It looks so much better. So I am extremely pleased. And I was a bit worried about gaping at the pockets here, but I think it's fine. Teeny bit, just because this obviously fits well, but the pleats at the back are really holding the bulk of the skirt to the back, so much so that it's pulling a little bit across the front. It's fine, it's okay. If I absolutely have to at some point, I don't like it, I'm going to unpick the waistband and resew it, it'll be fine. So, now, I'm obviously wearing, this is just like a t-shirt material dress underneath this. So I do have a petticoat on, kind of. I've been doing some research and some thinking about petticoats. So the volume, so even though the entire bottom hem of this skirt is 5.5 meters, the apparent volume of the skirt, so basically taking a tape measure and laying it on the ground so it goes around the outside of the skirt, is about 2.7 meters, which is the volume of the skirt that I wanted to turn into a petticoat with a bit of zhuzhing. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm actually thinking, not 100% sure I need 2 petticoats, actually. I had another old skirt that was going to be turned into something else again, and I laid the 2 of them together, and it's fine. I don't think it's necessary. So let me show you the difference between this skirt as it is and with the thingy I want to turn into a petticoat. So this is, let's drop down again. So, no petticoat. Okay, let's try this with a single petticoat. Well, 1.5. So, obviously, there's no additional volume in the swooshes at the back, obviously, because the petticoat's not going that far out. And I think that's okay. It's too big for me now anyway. Like the skirt that I'm trying as a petticoat is actually too big for me by a little bit. So, yeah, I think it's okay. I think 1 might be sufficient, but I think what I will do is, so I'm going to take off the waistband of the petticoat, I'm going to start calling it a petticoat, the old skirt / petticoat. I'm going to take off the waistband because I think it adds too much bulk. 1 sec. So we've got the dead elastic at the back, and we've got the waistband. It's fairly long. It's depending on where this sits, you could possibly see it underneath. So I think I'm not gonna even unpick it. I think I'm just gonna cut the entire waistband off and then put a new waistband on. So that's one thing. You can see it's pretty big. So depending on where it's actually sitting on my corseted waist, I think it's probably should be sitting just off the top of the hips. So I think what I might do is actually take the corset gore pattern, hip gore pattern again, and then turn that into basically a yoke for this to hang off. I think that will give the best look, the neatest look, and the smoothest look underneath kind of all of the pockets and the bum pads and the hip gores and all the rest of it. I think that will give the best look. I think what I'll do is basically add some gathers. I'll gather to the back in the same way that the skirt is gathered to the back. The only other thing that I'm tossing up as to whether I do that is to actually like slice the whole thing vertically and add some more gauze to basically add sort of skirt width, or I take the grey linen that I was going to turn into a separate petticoat. I think I'm just going to stick with one for the moment. I think one might be enough. Maybe I do a second one later, but it doesn't get very cold in Sydney, so there's no need for warmth, so it's really just volume and look, and I think I'm okay with the way it looks. I might add a ruffle, possibly even from the second tier. Just add like a really long ruffle around the knees, and I think that should give a shape where we've got the hips, lovely lovely hip spring, dropping to the knees and then kicking out again from the knee out. I think that should work, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. So I think that's the plan. So take the waistband off, use some of the grey linen to basically create a waist yoke, and then more of the grey linen to create a frill that goes from the knees all the way around. So it'll actually be like a double layer. So there'll be I'm not going to chop the skirt off, that's going to stay there. I'm just going to add like an extra layer around the outside. I think that should work. We see how we go. But yeah, let's try that. So the bum roll, the bum padding is done. So what I have at the moment is I have the bum roll tied on over top of the walking skirt. And the reason I want to do this is I need to work out both the volume and the length of the petticoat that I want to go underneath it. So, this is the skirt that's being sacrificed to become a petticoat. Now, I've got it. Oop. Now, I have this pinned on so that the hem is flat at the bottom and it's about 17 centimeters above the floor level. The skirt itself touches the floor, so that gives me a sort of a petticoat hem height of about 17 centimeters, which works fine. I don't want the petticoat to be seen underneath, so this should work okay. So the plan is to take this line, so where one of the layers of the sort of gathers of the skirt, and attach an additional frill at this level. So that will hit just below the knee, which I think should be fine. A little higher up would be better, but I think this will be close enough. And then basically add an additional frill there. And that should give a bit more volume sort of at the lower edge of the skirt, which I think should work. If that's not enough, what I could do, assuming I have enough material, is add another layer attached at this level, and I think that would also work. I might even start at this level first, put a layer on it here, and then if I need it, add another layer underneath instead. I'll think about it. I might work out if I have enough material to do that. The other thing I'm going to do is, you can see that this is pinned up quite high here, way above the waistline, and that's in order to get the skirt to sit, so the hem is sitting evenly at the bottom. I could do it the other way around, but I think this will be fine. So I'm actually going to cut out about 4 centimeters or so, curving it around over the hips to make that line level. And then I'm going to put I'm basically going to use some of the grey linen to make a casing to attach a drawstring. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to anchor the drawstring here and here, and then just have it so just the back can gather. And I think that should give me the right effect. So it should mean, hopefully, more of the fullness ends up at the back of the skirt, which is back and sides. I do want a little bit at the side of the hips here because it makes the hip spring look better, or look more generous as well. So I think I do want to do that as well. The other thing I think I'm going to do is I'm going to unevenly gather the frill. So that's going to be attached at either here or here, whatever works. I'm going to have more of the volume at the back and the sides and less across the front, just to keep that same sort of shape going. I think that will help. There are examples of petticoats, not more from the bustle era, where there's a frill around the bottom and then there's repeated frills that go up the back to add all the volume in the back. So the idea is much the same, but yeah, so I'm going to concentrate more, like perhaps 1 to 1.5, sorry, 1.5 times the volume, perhaps just the front third, and then double sort of around the sides and the back. So I think that should work. So the first step is to do the waistband, and then just check that idea works, and then work out how much material I have left that I can do the frills with. The one thing I'm realizing is if I go ahead and do this, I probably won't have enough material left over in the grey sheet to make a second petticoat, so I need to make this one be good. I do have other skirts that I could wear as a petticoat if I needed to, so if I really need a second petticoat, there are things I can do. So that's the next part of the plan. I'm done. I have made a very successful bum roll and petticoat. I'm really pleased with how it looks. It really does improve the overall look of the skirt. The skirt is fine. It looks perfectly nice on its own, but it loses that Victorian feel without the petticoat. So this is with the petticoat and the bum roll, it looks fantastic. The petticoat itself it basically has the effect of 2 layers. So this is the additional kind of slightly above knee length frilled gather at pretty much double, it's actually double and a bit the width of the bottom hem. And then we have the actual kind of original bottom hem of the actual skirt that I used as the framework for the whole thing. Together, they work really well. I've actually added a little bit of decorative lace at the top where the frill is sewn onto the skirt to tie in with the decoration on the chemise as well, but also because there was a bit of where the gather, because I just sewed it on top of another thing, there was a lot of bulk at the gather, and I was a bit worried that it would add basically a bump kind of on top of like the skirt, and that's helped. There wasn't a great deal of a bump anyway. It wasn't really necessary, but I like the additional trim. I don't have any more cream ribbon, so I'm going to buy some, and then I'm going to run the ribbon through the skirt, and then the 2 pieces will actually tie together really nicely. Not that anyone apart from you is actually meant to see all of these undergarments anyway, but we must have them matching. So, do I need a second petticoat? I don't really think so. Honestly, I don't think this skirt really necessarily, I mean, there's heaps in the back, that's fine, but there's not necessarily, it will start, with any more volume sideways, it will start to pull at these pleats in a weird way. So I don't think I need another petticoat. However, I do have sufficient grey linen, of the worse linen, the stiff linen. I do have sufficient grey linen left to make a very simple sort of very simple tube style petticoat if I needed to. So, you know, like 2 squares with some seams and a drawstring. I do have enough to pull off that if absolutely required. But that would actually be a lot more narrow than the one I've got, so I don't know how that would be a benefit at all. So I think it's fine. I think it's fine. Basically, I'm already wearing 2 petticoats from the knees down, effectively, because I didn't cut away the under part of the skirt. I left it there, so I think it's okay. But this project, man, it's heading along nicely. What's next? I'm not quite sure yet. Either the shirtwaist, which I will be constructing out of secondhand shirts and possibly some other old clothes of mine, and you will see why that's the case, and I think it will work quite well. It will be black. I mean, just so you know, we are sticking with the goth theme here is what I am saying. Anyway, or it might be the final vest of the collection, which we'll see what happens. We'll see which one happens first. So, should I make the shirt before the vest? Yes, but if the vest vibe strikes, we must vibe with the vests. So, but thank you very much for watching. Managed to do another project, and this one didn't take too long either, which is always good. But I'm really pleased with the results. I did need a bum pad. I was wrong. I admit it. But that's fine. So, if you have not, please do subscribe here on YouTube. You can also find me on Instagram and a few other places on the internets. Links in the description. Do give this video a thumbs up if it's your kind of vibe. It's very much appreciated if you do. Thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.